If you're a coach or service provider that sells anything over $3,000, then you're probably selling that over the phone or on some kind of live video call. So today we are going to learn 15 mistakes that you should avoid on your discovery calls, strategy calls, clarity calls, or whatever you want to call them. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Alan, and on this channel, we learn everything about booking high-ticket discovery calls and clients. Now, I know that there are tons of videos about what you should do on your discovery calls, including like the ones you can find here. But in any case, today we're going to focus on what you should not do. So let's go ahead and jump right in to the 15 mistakes to avoid on your discovery calls. So the first mistake to avoid on your sales calls is to not have a plan or a goal in mind. So obviously this makes sense when you start any journey or any path or any campaign that you should have a goal or some kind of desired outcome and a plan to reach that outcome. So when it comes to your discovery calls, you should definitely at the very least have a script, a plan, an offer at the end, and just an overall plan and strategy for how to conduct your call. The next mistake to avoid on your calls, so we just mentioned not having a script. Now we have a whole separate problem, which is not sticking to your script as well. So as you might imagine, it doesn't matter how great your script or your responses to objections or your offer or any of these things are if you don't stick to them when you're actually on live calls. Now, yes, when there's any live element involved, including on a call, a video call, or anything like that, then the conversation can literally go in any direction. As much as we would like to think or say we have full control, we definitely don't know which way things are going to go. Now, given that, we can still and we should still have a plan for which way we should steer that conversation, whichever direction it happens to go. The next mistake to avoid on your discovery calls is actually still related to your script, but this time it is about sticking too tightly to your script. Now, to be fair, obviously you have a script for a reason, and this script has good responses to objections. It has a good storyline, plot, projection, or progression, I should say. But like I just mentioned, that you never know which direction a live call can go. They might ask some weird off-the-wall question, or have some interesting concern, or have an interesting experience already, or anyway, we literally have no idea which way it can go. But the point here is that you definitely do not want to not have a plan at all. You definitely don't want to avoid it or not stick to it at all on your calls. And one last tip here is you don't want to stick to your script too robotically or too strictly to the point where it doesn't give you any room for variation or breathing room or anything like that. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is to be too robotic and to provide kind of an interrogation, you could say. So most of us, when we have a script or anything like that in mind, then we already have at least 10 questions to ask our prospect. Now, while those responses and that data is important for us to get, we definitely don't want to appear too robotic or for it to seem like an interrogation, like, well, what's your name? What's your income this year? What are your goals? You don't want it to feel like it's too much of a transaction or it's like a one-way conversation. You want it to seem like a regular conversation and to make it seem you want to be empathetic and like you understand what they're going through. The next mistake to avoid on your discovery or strategy or clarity calls is to talk about yourself and your offer too much. Now, like I mentioned, that we all have our script ready, but we should definitely also always remember that this call has to do with them, the prospect, their worries, their concerns, their goals. Now, a lot of people actually, I was on a discovery call recently when I was looking for some coaching recently. Anyway, the point is that this person I was talking to spent the entire conversation speaking about them, their offer, what they can offer, what they want, what their goals are, what their mission is. Now, that's great and all, and there is a time and place for that, but keep in mind that when it comes to discovery calls, strategy calls, any type of sales call, your goal is to have the prospect, the potential customer, do most of the talking. Now, I know that this isn't exactly new information, but you may or may not be surprised at how many coaches, consultants, service providers actually do this, that they spend their entire call talking about what the business can offer, the mission of the business, the goals of the business, the offer of the business. Notice how all of this has to do with the business and not with the prospect themselves. Now, the mistake we just discussed was about talking about you and your offer. Now, the next mistake to avoid is similar, which is flat out talking too much. Now, I know I kind of touched on this on the last one, but the point is that your prospect or whoever you're speaking to should be speaking at least about 60 to 70% of the conversation. Now, yes, that number might vary a little bit, but the point is that they should be speaking more than you. Now, personally, I would say that they should be speaking at least about 60% of your conversation. The next mistake to avoid is asking bad questions. So, of course, any discovery call is really a fact-finding mission where you want to find out their words, their problems, their exact language, pretty much where they are now, what their goals are, and where they are looking to go. Now, there are actually 3 ways to judge if you are asking a probably bad question, but let's go ahead and just start with these. The first way is to ask closed questions or too many closed questions. So as a quick reminder to middle school or high school, a closed question is one where they can answer just flat out yes or no. This is the type of question you generally want to avoid. You want to give them an opportunity to express their feelings, their projections, their goals, their analysis, pretty much anything that is more than just a yes or no. The second type of question to avoid is those that are only surface level. So you can save these questions kind of for the small talk section or for your online application section or something like that. But the point is that if it's very surface level, very cosmetic, and doesn't really matter or doesn't really give you any valuable information to the state or status of their business, then you're better off just leaving it out. And this actually leads us to the third type of question to avoid, which is to just have too many. Now, I know that we all want to have as much information as possible about their past, their present, their intended future, and so forth. But the one great rule to keep in mind when you're thinking about which questions you should ask on your discovery or strategy calls is that if your question is how many questions should I ask, the answer is always as many as you need and none more. We just mentioned earlier that you don't want it to seem like an interrogation. So most discovery calls usually have between maybe 10 to 15 questions. So any additional question you ask that doesn't provide value, then just flat out cut it. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is to not have a call to action or offer. So given that you're spending 20 minutes, 15 or 30 or an hour or however long with this person, I assume that you are doing this with intention of making a sale. The problem with this step is that most entrepreneurs and business people and businesses and marketers and all types of titles like that, regardless of how much sales training they have and so forth, they still get uneasy or just otherwise weird about actually making the offer, making the pitch. So like I said, the mistake here is not having a call to action or offer. So this means at the end of the call, just saying, "Oh, so what do you think about it? Oh, so does that sound good to you?" As you can see here, these are not great. Actually, they aren't calls to action at all. So near the end of the call, when you're closing or future pacing or something like that, you want to let them know what are the next steps and how can they get started. So this means, all right, great. I need a deposit at this website and we can move forward. Or, oh, I just need you to agree to this on this email. Or I need you to sign up here or pay here or book our follow-up call here. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is not preparing or researching your prospect that you'll be speaking to. So I know this seems like somewhat of a basic step, but you should definitely remember to research your prospect that you're going to talk to. Research their industry, their business, their latest campaigns, their latest ads, their latest launches, everything that they offer, everything that they sell, their funnel if you can. You get the point here. And on top of researching the prospect that you're about to speak to, obviously you should also prepare for the call as best you can. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is not taking notes. Now, I know when you're on a live video call, you may feel like you have to make eye contact as much as possible and listen as much as possible. And to be fair, there is some argument in favor of those points, but taking notes can be maybe the most important part of your entire call. Now, I know that we all love to think that, oh, I'll remember what they said. I'll remember that thing. I'll remember to do that thing in the morning. But trust me, you will forget most of what they say on the call. So when you ask them, what are the biggest problems you've had? What have you tried already? What are your goals? What are your dreams? Anyway, literally almost any important point, write it down. And on top of that, this is kind of a whole separate note, but I'll include it here, is that you should record your calls if and whenever you can. So if it's a discovery call, sales call, whatever it might be, then ask permission, check your local, state, and federal laws. But the point is, do everything you can to record every call you're on. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is running the call too long or too short. Now, we already mentioned asking too many questions, which pretty much aren't relevant or which don't help you cater your message. But you can also run your calls too short, where you don't ask enough questions, you don't delve deep enough, you don't present strong enough call to action or offer. So just keep that in mind, that a big way to mess up your discovery call, not to overthink it, is to run it way too long, which, well, that really depends on your niche and your call. But even worse or equally bad would be to run it too short. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is giving free advice. Now, you can consider this free coaching, free consulting, advice, or anything like that. But the point is that you generally don't want to give too much on that initial call to the point where they feel like they already have it covered. Now, obviously, this does not mean don't provide value, don't give suggestions, don't analyze their situation or anything like that. But if you give a full analysis and a full prescription right on the call, then they will feel significantly less compelled to actually buy whatever it is that you're selling and to work with you. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is not prescribing. Now, this pretty much means, let's just say, not personalizing your prescription or your solution enough. Now, you should probably, in your discovery call questions, should already have discovered what their goals are, what their problems are, what their dreams are, what their obstacles were, and so forth. But the main goal of all those questions is for you to extract the exact language that your prospects have and to give it back to them or to repeat it in your offer. So the point is that you want your prospects to feel that they have been heard, that their problems are understood, and that your solution is specifically tailored and customized and personalized to solve that problem for them. The next mistake to avoid on your calls is to definitely not mistake objections with rejections. So the point here is that naturally, human psychology will naturally lead us to reject or to question or to have objections when anybody presents us with any offer that leads to us exchanging or losing our resources. Now, for one reason or another, many marketers and salespeople, maybe even most, when they hear a prospect say, oh, well, I don't know about the price, they automatically say, oh, well, that's a rejection, they're not going to take this. Or if somebody says, oh, my spouse, I'll have to double check with my spouse. Oh, the price sounds too high. Oh, I'm not sure if I need it. Pretty much any of the million, let's say 1,000 objections that a prospect can come up with, most salespeople and marketers interpret that objection as a rejection, which is absolutely not the case. You can also translate this into the fact that a complaint is not an objection. So the point here is that just because you get a little bit of pushback or even a lot of pushback from your prospect does not mean they are saying no. This is the natural human response. This means we will naturally say, but what's the catch? But what's the problem? But what's the price? But how has this worked for other people? But what's your guarantee? Anyway, all of those things somewhat don't matter. The point is that you should be ready and even expect a little bit of pushback or even a lot when you present your offer. And the next mistake to avoid on your calls, which might be the most important, is not setting up a follow-up call or conversation. Now, yes, this is more useful if your prospect did not buy on your initial discovery call, but the point is that if anything happened which wasn't your main goal, then your new goal should be to set up a future call. Now, this might be a future discovery call. Let's say, oh, well, great. Well, after you check out those few competitors of mine, let's relink up on Friday to see what your options are and what you decided. Let's meet up next week or have a call next week or something like that. Now, you generally want to have a 10-day maximum for this follow-up call. All right, I guess you could say 2 weeks maximum, but the point is you don't want them to forget about your conversation, your pitch, your offer. Yes, they will forget some of it anyway, but you don't want to add too much distance in between your call, your initial call, and your follow-up call. And the absolute biggest mistake you can make on your high-ticket discovery calls is not subscribing or hitting the like button below. If you learned something interesting today, it does help a lot. For more help booking consistent high-ticket discovery calls and clients, then definitely book a free strategy call with me below to find the opportunities in your business. Well, that wraps us up for today. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one.